Your pension is not going to do what you want it to do. I know it's not what you want to hear. I know that you've been told by your HR department, by your financial advisor, by the system that collected your contributions for 30 years, that if you just stay the course, the numbers will work out. But here is what they're not factoring in, what they could not factor in or chose not to. Inflation is not a news story. It is a slow tax on everything that you've saved for. Treasury yields are doing something that retirement planning software from 10 years ago was not built to model. And the gap between what your pension promises and what it will actually purchase in groceries, in healthcare, in housing is widening every year. This is not a prediction. This is not a worst case scenario. This is the math in bed math. In other words, plain math. And the numbers, they're already in. Today, I'm going to show you the evidence, the actual data. Your retirement purchasing power is being destroyed in slow motion. And then I'm going to show you exactly what people who have figured this out is doing right now. Let's get into it. My name is Emerald. I built Relocate with Revenue because I looked at the same numbers you are about to see, and I made a decision, not out of panic, out of clarity. I'm based in Nairobi, Kenya. I live what I teach, and the reason I cover global financial topics on this channel is simple. You cannot make a sound relocation decision without understanding what is happening with your money right now at a macro level. The where to live question and the what is my money doing question are the same questions. Let me say this again. The where to live money question and the what is my money doing question are the same questions. You just don't realize it yet. If this is the kind of financial intelligence that you've been looking for, the real data, honest analysis, no sugarcoating, hit the subscribe button now. I'm ramping up my content publishing because this is the time like no other. And this information has to reach my audience who needs to hear it. Let's get into the evidence. Let's start with the number most retirement conversation begins with, your monthly income. Say your social security payment is $1,800 per month. That is roughly the average for an American retiree, according to the Social Security Administration. But first, in addition to the social security payment, perhaps you have a pension on top of that, maybe a modest 401k draw. Let's call it your total retirement income, $2,500 per month. For many people, that felt adequate when you planned for it. It felt like enough. But here's what happened while you were doing everything right. The Consumer Price Index, CPI for short, is the official measure of inflation. It has risen significantly since 2020. The cumulative inflation between 2020 and 2025 have eroded purchasing power to a fixed dollar amount of approximately 20 to 23%. This means that $2,500 in 2020's money buys approximately $2,000 in today's money. That's the equivalent of a pay cut that no one had a say in. But here's another factor using the official CPI data, which always underweights what retirees actually spend money on: healthcare, medication, housing, food. The medication inflation rate has consistently outpaced general inflation. Medicare Part B premiums have risen every year for the past decade. The average out-of-pocket healthcare cost for a retired couple, according to Fidelity's annual estimate, now exceeds $300,000 during the course of your retirement. That is not a hospital stay. That's routine care, prescription, dental, vision. Your pension did not grow by 20% to compensate. Your Social Security cost of living adjustments, the COLAs, average between 2 and 8% in recent years. You're not running out of money. Your money is running out of value. Those are different problems and they require different solutions. That distinction matters because most retirement advice is built around not running out of money. It's almost entirely silent on what happens when the worth of your money is actually not what its value is. Now, let's talk about something that most people in their 50s and 60s have never had to think about before, and that is directly affecting their retirement reality. U.S. Treasury yields. I know that phrase does not exactly make your pulse race, at least not in the right way. But stay with me for 60 seconds because this connects directly to your mortgage, to your cost of living, and the stability of every financial institution that holds your pensions. When the US government needs to borrow money, and it borrows a lot of it sells Treasury bonds. The yields on those bonds is essentially the interest rate that the government pays to its lenders. And when the yields rise, something happens across the entire financial system. Everything that is priced off of the rate also goes up. When the 30-year yield is near 5%, mortgage rates do not come down, no matter how many tantrums the guy in the White House throws. They stay elevated or climb further. Credit card rates, already averaging above 21%, don't ease. And the US government's own interest payment on its national debt is already exceeding $1 trillion per year, and it's climbing even higher. Here is the connection to your pension that most financial advisors do not illustrate clearly to you. Many pension plans, the traditional pensions, are heavily invested in bonds. When yields rise sharply, the value of existing bond holdings fall. Think of it this way. Imagine you locked in a fixed rent on an amazing apartment at $1,000 per month back when that was the going rate in the neighborhood. Good deal at the time. But now the neighborhood has changed. The market rent is $1,800. Your landlord cannot charge you more. You're locked in. But if he ever needs to sell that building, he cannot get a full price for it either. Because any buyer looking at it would say this asset is underperforming for what the market is offering right now. That is what is happening right now to your pension funds. Your pension fund is that landlord, and the bonds that it holds are locked in leases. When the pension funds were declared fully funded, when your HR department told you that the money was there, the promises were secure. Interest rates were near 3%. The bonds the fund held were priced at for that world. They made sense in that world, not in today's economy. Now yields are approaching 5%. And just like that apartment building, the value of those existing bond holdings have dropped because why would someone pay full price for a 3% return when the market is offering 5%? The assets that were supposed to back your pension are worth less. Funds that look healthy are now showing strain. This is not guesswork. The Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation, the federal body whose sole job is to reinforce private pensions when they fail, they have flagged increase in stress in multi-employer pension plans for several consecutive years. They are the fire alarm, and the alarm is going off. Now, for those of you not in a traditional pension, those relying on a 401k or an IRA, the problem looks slightly different, but lands in the same place. Picture this. You spend years filling your bucket with water, every month a little more and a little more. The plan is always to start drawing from the bucket when you retire. But now, right at the moment you need to start drawing, someone is drilling small holes in the bottom. Rising yields put a downward pressure on the stock market. The value of what is in your 401k dips exactly the moment you are going to pull money out of it. Every withdrawal you make at a depressed value is a withdrawal you can never recover from. The math that worked beautifully when you were accumulating works against you when you're drawing down. This is the environment your retirement income is living in right now. Not in theory, today. Now, here is something else. Everything I've described so far, the inflation pressure, the bond yield stress, the pension fund squeeze, applies to all Americans navigating retirement in this environment. But what if you're not American? What if you're watching this from Canada, from the UK, from Australia, and you're thinking, does any of this even apply to me? It does, more than you might expect. Because what is happening to pensions right now is not purely an American story. It's a global story. And the US, its economic decisions, its foreign policies, its Federal Reserve sits right in the center of it, whether you live in America or not. Let's do a high level look at these three other countries, Canada, UK, and Australia. Canada's pension architect appears more stable than America's on paper. The Canadian Pension Plan, CPP for short, is widely regarded as one of the better funded public pension systems in the developed world. It has reserves. It has a professional investment board. It is not, by any measure, in the same distress as Social Security. But here is the problem. Canada's pension story is not one of crisis. It's one of quiet vulnerability to a neighbor's whose decision it cannot control and cannot fully escape. The United Kingdom had what I called a near miss moment in late 2022. The short lived Truss government announced a package of underfunded tax cuts. The bond market, which had already been destabilized because of the global rate rise driven largely by the Federal Reserve policy, responded instantly and brutally. In plain English, pension funds across the United Kingdom were days, some estimates says hours, away from being forced to liquidate assets at a distressed price to meet their margin calls. It was resolved, but the resolution was temporary. The underlying conditions that made this possible, the leveraged pension investment strategy built on the assumption of stable rates, operating in a global rate environment set largely by the Federal Reserve, those conditions have not fundamentally changed. Australia, on the other hand, has the most sophisticated compulsory superannuation system in the world. The system of mandated employer contributions, professionally managed funds, decades of accumulation is genuinely impressive. Australians retire on average with more in their pension accounts than citizens of almost any comparable country. And yet, the super system has a structural exposure that most Australians never think about until it's too late to act on. Australian super funds are among the largest investors of predominantly US equities and assets. The top super funds hold tens of billions in US technology stocks, US private equity, and US infrastructure. So when the US market corrects, Australian retirement balances corrects with them. Not because Australia's economy failed, but because the world reserve currency market moved. Australia built the world's best super system, but it is built inside of the global financial architecture it doesn't control. And that architecture is starting to show its cracks. 4 countries, 4 different pension systems, 4 different governments, and 4 different economies. And the same pressure points are running through all of them. This is not conspiracy. This is the architecture. The dollar is still the world's reserve currency, but the world is changing faster than we could imagine a year ago. The United States Federal Reserve sets the global cost of money, at least for now. When it raises rates, capital flows towards dollar-denominated assets and away from everything else. Currency weakens, import cost rises, and pension funds that are holding US assets sees a huge valuation shift. That means US policy is everyone's reality. And it means that the question facing a retiree in Manchester, Montreal, Melbourne is not so different from the one facing a retiree in Memphis. So now, bring it back to you. Your pension is under pressure. The yields are working against you. And the standard advice, stay the course, trust the system, everything will work out, is increasingly difficult to defend with a straight face. What do people who understand this actually do? There are 2 exits, and they are not mutually exclusive. The first is income diversification. Build in location independent income streams that do not depend on a single employer, a single pension fund, a single country's economic stability. Consulting, digital products, content, do-it-yourself service that travels with you wherever you go. If your income is portable, you are no longer anchored to a system that no longer serves you. The second is geo-arbitrage, taking the income you have, pension, social security, savings draw, and the new portable income that you build, and place it in an environment where it works substantially harder, where $2,500 a month is not survival, it's genuinely a full life. Note that the principle extends beyond Kenya, beyond Mexico, Portugal, Latvia, Thailand. These are all environments around the world where fixed retirement income buys a standard of living that the same income cannot touch in the United States, Canada, UK, Australia. This is not running away from a problem. This is applying intelligence to a situation, using your money where it works hardest for you. I plan to cover my Nairobi numbers in detail in a few videos from now. Be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you're notified when that drops. And if you've watched this far and you are not someone who needs to be convinced that there is a problem, you already know it. You just needed the breakdown, the data, the structure to name it clearly, and to start building a strategic response rather than a reactive one. That is exactly why I built the digital relocation blueprint. It is a 5-module framework across 82 pages. The income first framework, build in portable income before you make a move. The relocation reality checklist. If you're looking at your numbers right now, your pension, projection, your savings rate, your timeline, and you know what you need is not another document, but a conversation, this strategy session is a 60-minute private consultation with a written action plan delivered to your inbox. That is for the person who is done with information and ready for a decision. Link is in the description below. The strategy session gets you moving. I'm Emerald. Because this pension is not going to fix itself. The inflation is not going to reverse. The Treasury bond yield environment is not going to cooperate with your retirement timeline. But don't despair. None of that means that the story ends here. It means that the story changes and you decide how. With information, with a plan, with income that moves with you wherever your money works hardest. That is why I built this channel. That is why Relocate with Revenue exists. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your support. Please like, share, and subscribe. Drop a comment below and let me know what numbers keep you up at night. Is it inflation, healthcare costs, pension gap? Tell me. I read every comment and it shapes exactly what I cover next. I'm Emro. Stay free, stay informed, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.